This is the final four of controllers. So we have whittled it down to four contenders, and today we are going to cover the final four and the championship of the best vintage controller in the history of mankind. Alex, the first setup, the first matchup we have is the Nintendo Super Scope versus the Nintendo Virtual Boy controller. So, which one of these have you had the most? I know the answer. You've played with the Virtual Boy the most. Initial thoughts. What do you think of this matchup?
So I leaned heavily on the Super Scope last episode, I believe, talking about the immersion that it provides. It gives you something that other controllers aren't doing. And that's very great and that's very cool. It just doesn't have the versatility, right? If you're not playing a shooting game, what are you doing with the Super Scope? So that leads me into thinking that Virtual Boy is going to be my winner here. I mean, it's up for debate. You got some knowledge you're going to drop on me, I'm sure. Virtual Boy is what I have most experience with. It's something that I love, and that controller it feels like it was molded for my hands, and that's something I like in a controller. So I'm leaning Virtual Boy, and it's up to you to convince me otherwise, man.
Well, it's not. We are an unbiased organization here at Gaming is in Session, and so we're going to lay down the facts. Let the audience decide for themselves and then tell them why they are right or wrong based on our opinions. So the Super Scope is a 2.5 foot long peripheral for Nintendo. Very simple. It's got a shoulder guard. It's got multiple firing mechanisms, and it's got a nice magnifying glass. So the biggest downsides is that you're right. It's only compatible with 12 different games, and many of those games aren't super well known. And they're pretty similar. They're puzzle games, they're basic shooting games. But what it does well is, like you said, it does allow you to be immersed into the environment. And obviously, as a kid, how cool you can have it as a bazooka, or you can use it as like a sniper type weapon. And we're both fans of VR. We love the aim controller that PlayStation and Sony has created. A little more advanced than the Super Scope, but it's really cool, the immersive nature, how big it is. It really feels like you have a bazooka. I've used it a couple times. It is real neat. The games for it, again, aren't great, but it actually works really well. And that's one thing that I think it has over like the Power Pad or the Power Glove or some of the other peripherals, is that it actually does work, and it works pretty well. Another negative is that it takes 6 AA batteries, and it drains those bad boys in 1 to 2 hours. So have you played with a Super Scope before?
I've not played with a Super Scope before. I'm guessing you mentioned that you have. My first question with the Super Scope, since you played with it, is it wireless? Like, you have 6 AAA batteries and there are AA batteries in there. Is it a wireless controller?
Yeah, it's completely wireless. It's essentially a light gun.
Yeah.
And it's wireless, and that is a really cool aspect. Obviously, you can't be too far away because it's a light gun, but yeah, it's pretty neat. I think it might be the first wireless controller. I don't want to say that. I'm not sure.
Mentioned, wireless technology wasn't anything new, but like here, I got in honor of this, I brought out my Lethal Enforcer Justifier for my Sega Genesis. You can see this thing's wired as hell. So it's pretty cool that for Super Nintendo, you had a wireless light gun. That's impressive. And maybe that's why these are so hard to come by, is I think it required some kind of extra thing to create that wireless signal that people just seem to have lost. So when you get a secondhand Super Scope, it doesn't have that piece. You can't use it. I'm guessing it was comfortable.
I mean, yeah, it was probably maybe. I mean, even for me, as essentially an adult, it fit pretty well. Maybe it was a little big if you were like a little kid, but yeah, it was comfortable. I like the fact you could use it as a sniper or a bazooka. The games for it, like I said, were kind of one-dimensional, but it still made them a lot more fun. And even nowadays, if you want to try it, it's pretty cheap. You could probably get a scope, I don't know, around $20 or so. And then the games are, I mean, you could, I don't know, give a moist fart and they would give you a Super Scope 6 game or something like that. So you could try it nowadays with very little investment. A final question before we start talking about your Virtual Boy. The Menacer, or not Menacer, the gun you had, or the Nintendo Zap gun, which one wins? Side note, real quick.
the Justifier for sure is way better than the Zag. Look at this. You have the perfect toy gun if you look for toy guns. You just cut this little wire off. You got this awesome little revolver gun here. It's just fun. It's a fun little toy gun. It's perfect. You know, you paint this black, you'd be in a lot of trouble. So that's a good sign of a toy gun, right?
That's true. That's true. Unfortunately, it didn't make it past the round of 64 because we didn't even talk about it in the Sweet 16. So the Virtual Boy, now released in 1995, the Virtual Boy, I will say it was revolutionary, right? It had that like monochromatic red and blue or red and black, and it helped create 3D immersive environments. What were some of your favorite games that it provided that you could play on it?
Well, let's see. It kicked off the whole Wario franchise. So Wario Land was like the big one that came out. That was their platformer. They didn't release with a traditional Mario game. They released a Wario game. Super fun, awesome game. You have a foreground, you have a background, everything's in 3D. And like 3D, it's 2D, but you have like, you know, the different phases that you can see and focus on. And it's fun hopping back and forth between those. Mario Clash, it was kind of like an iteration of, you know, the old school Mario game. Before it was like a side scroller. It was just like that one screen, and you could you had the turtles kind of popping across. You got to jump on them and go through you go through the pipe one end, you come out the other end. That old school Mario game, they iterated on that, made Mario Clash, and not only are you attacking enemies left and right, you're attacking enemies in the foreground and background. Super fun. There was like 99 levels. It was awesome. There was Red Alert or Red Alarm. It's a wireframe, fully 3D dogfighting, like Star Fox, before Star Fox knew what it was to be in 3D. And then, of course, the granddaddy, Telero Boxer. Oh my goodness, what an awesome boxing game. And that really used the controller. Here you go. You have a D-pad for each hand. So you want to block low with one hand and then block high with the other hand. Bam, there you go, baby. There you go. You got your A's, you get your B's, get your shoulder buttons. You got everything you need. Perfect boxing sim right there. It was an amazing game. And then there was Waterworld, which I never played, but apparently that was like a big killer app that was supposed to come out, and the movie flopped and nobody bought the game.
Yeah, I think I saw a review of it. It was real bad. Obviously, you're in this water environment. It's all red. Like, it looked bad, and the game wasn't good. Anyhow, the 3D Tetris was the game that I was interested in. I didn't think I got to play it I don't think you had the game when yours. But interesting, like Virtual Boy was like one of the only products that actually was a financial loss for Nintendo. Was in market, less than a year. So really, you're holding a collector's item right there. And I want you to show us the controller a little more, in which you got the 2 directional pads. You got this M-looking shape, right? You got the 2 drop downs. You got the A and B buttons, start and select. And interesting, I think this is one of the first controllers that utilized this M configuration kind of looking thing. But the thing is, as you hold it now, as a full-grown man, as a kid, you're playing video games, you can overcome bad ergonomics or uncomfortable controllers. As a full-grown man, is it comfortable in your hands?
It couldn't be more comfortable. Look at this. Look at this, the fine contoured ridges right there. They want your fingers to lie right there. There's no question about, oh, where do I hit this button? Here's the thing. You got shoulder buttons. That's not ergonomic. It's not what you want. Look at this. It's right here. And nowadays, the game controllers are going there. They want your fingers to be there already. This had it solved. This is it. They should have taken this controller, throw an analog stick on it, and made it all of their, they forget the GameCube. They should have just made this your 3D controller with analog sticks right here, left and right. Oh, it's so good. Here's the battery pack right here. You can see it's got a nice little image of 6 AA batteries. Yeah, that thing, it's a hog, it's a hoss. You pop it out. Here's the thing, you can buy extra ones so that you can just have it preloaded. So when it's ready to go, oh, battery's low, bam, pop it out. Pop this. Of course, you got to turn the console off because this is how you're powering the entire thing. Of course, there is an AC adapter. It makes things a bit heavy. Here's something I like. Look at this cord. Needlessly long. Okay, it's actually not that long. You couldn't sit away from a TV, but you don't need it this long. You're sitting there with the Virtual Boy. You're not going to be leaning back in that thing. It just plops right in there. And if anything, it kind of gets in the way. So maybe shorten that up a little bit. But man, it was good. Here's why the controller is long, because here's what you do. Your neck gets tired playing Virtual Boy. You lay down in bed, lean back, and then you have your controller down as far away as you want. Oh, it's just so good. You got the 2 little feet of the Virtual Boy stabbing you in the chest right here. Let me see if I got that. It's here somewhere. Here we go. Yeah, the Virtual Boy, the feet. Oh man, just right there. Hook it into my eyes, man. Hook it right into my eyes. I got the whole thing here somewhere. Oh, bear with me. Oh, Oh,
Alex only gets to bring this out like once every 5 years, so he's
Yeah.
real excited to pop this puppy out.
I got it on backwards. Look at this. Set this up. Oh, there we go. And here we go. And there. I'm playing games. I don't even know. Adam, ask me where I think I am right now.
Where are you?
I'm in the boxing ring fighting a robot. Adam, pull me back. Pull me back, man.
No, you stay in there. It's the world you belong in. It's the world you deserve. Okay, so I will say with the controller, I like the M configuration. I like that it's ergonomic. I played with it. It really was pretty comfortable. I think a lot of controllers, I mean, look at the N64, look at the GameCube. I legit think they are modeled after the Virtual Boy controller. So it does take the 6 AA batteries, similar to the Super Scope. So they got that in common. But I do think the Super Scope probably definitely uses them much faster. And I like the idea that the Virtual Boy is a simple controller that's comfortable. And in my mind, comfort is king. So I really like that about the Virtual Boy. It doesn't do anything wild. It's simple. It's comfortable. With everything being said, what do you think your final answer is on whether the Virtual Boy or the Super Scope advances to the championship round?
Super Scope put up a good fight, but then I grabbed this controller again and I realized how much it felt like home, even though it's been years since I've played the Virtual Boy. I would love if this controller were present on every video game console. Virtual Boy wins hands down for me, man. Look at how happy I am. Look how happy my hands are. I got big man hands and they're just all up in here, hitting all the buttons. Everything feels by design. I'm pressing exactly where I want to be pressing, exactly where it wants to. This is perfection in a game controller.
So now remember, here in Gaming is in Session, we are an unbiased organization. Are you sure this isn't nostalgia talking and it's unbiased, clear-cut, black and white evidence?
I'm just going to show you again. Look how let me pick up the controller. I've never touched one of these before. Oh, I know exactly where my fingers are supposed to go. I know exactly where what's going on here. I know exactly what I'm doing. That's just
okay.
that's
okay.
Awesome.
We're doing this for you, the people. There it is, Virtual Boy advancing. Next, we have the heavyweight division here, the N64 versus the Dreamcast. I legit think this is going to be, we're in the mud here, buddy. I don't know what you are thinking, but in 1996, Nintendo revolutionized the industry with the N64. You got Super Mario 64, Pilot Win64. Every freaking game under 64, is Nintendo, and that 3D nature. And I mean, look at this controller. And there's a lot to like about this N64 controller. First thing I want to say, we like the Virtual Boy. Look at this. If you shorten this up, that's a Virtual Boy controller pretty much. Different buttons, but it's the same thing. It's beautiful. And what I like about the Virtual Boy, I like about this. The drop down handles are very comfortable. They don't have the ridges like the Virtual Boy did, but I like how you have the analog stick and the trigger, so you can choose to hold and play the game that way. You can hold the 2 drop downs and use L and R. Use a directional pad if you didn't want to use analog. So for example, Super Mario 64, you got to use this analog, but for Pokemon Puzzle League, you could use this, but you aren't using that. Not if you're a real player, not if you actually want to win. So you're using directional pad. The fact that they're both comfortable and it has that versatility means a lot to me. The C buttons, didn't use them too often. The camera angles, that's neat. A and B, you don't need a million freaking buttons to play a game. I like that simplicity. And then the big old red boy in the middle. What is your experience with the N64? Have you ever had issues with it?
N64, obviously, like you said, they took some cues from the Virtual Boy. They must have known what was good about the Virtual Boy controller, but they maybe didn't want people to be confused with the failure of the Virtual Boy as it preceded the N64, because they're coming off of that failure of the heart of the console. So I think that's why they did away with some of the nice things, like the shoulder buttons being on the back rather than on the shoulder. But you can see they iterated that into the Z button. So that's really good. I mean, the Z button's a great revolution, right? I mean, you have these shooter games for the first time on a console, really, and you have a trigger button right there. That's awesome. That feels great. And even like the Move controller is doing that now. Like people were stealing these ideas. It was great. It feels, it looks ridiculous. We'll say that. 3 prongs. Who's got 3 prongs? Like who's got 3 hands, right? But it's a controller of options. Made it a bit hard to lug around, but I'll be damned if people didn't have 17 of these controllers lying around the house because they wanted to make sure they had enough to plug in into their system so they could play multiplayer GoldenEye. I mean, we should give it some props just for the fact that the controller was part of the console that had 4 slots in it, so you could plug in 4 controllers. It was one of the first ones to do that, I think, and that's kind of a big deal. The one issue I have with it is the analog stick will chew through your thumb's skin if you get hot and heavy, and the D-pad is pretty mushy. Like it's a bigger D-pad than what you expect, and you don't get quite the travel on it that you would like for a D-pad. Analog stick also, it's got those notches, so you can get your cardinal directions, then like the northwest and the northeast and stuff. They're good for the most part, and they're nice reminders when you get in the weeds, you don't know where you're pointing, because we were new at analog sticks then. But then after a while, I think they kind of got in the way. I didn't like the way they pigeonholed me into what directions I wanted to move. But overall, I had wonderful memories of the N64, and the controller was never an issue for me.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I didn't have too much issue with it eating my thumb up, but the analog does get worn out faster than most controllers nowadays. It loses sensitivity. Like one example in Pokemon Puzzle League, why you wouldn't use it is you don't have the coarse or the fine movement. Like at Super Mario 64, you may not need to be exact, but in Pokemon Puzzle League, you have to be exact in a fraction of a second, or it's not going to happen. That's why you have to use a directional pad. Some other stuff that I really like about the controller is the fact that it did come equipped with the ability to push technology forward in the video game industry. So this little puppy right here, back here, one, obviously you can put your memory card in there. So if you want to store your game files, you got that, but you also have the Rumble packs. So if like normal person, you want to play Star Fox and you want an added little bit of immersion or to feel the rumble, or if you're just like Alex's mom and she wants to sit on it and let it rumble, then that's great. You could play Hey You Pikachu. They had an attachment, a microphone. So you could sit there and scream expletives at that pee slurping, ground humping rat who doesn't listen to a freaking thing you say, but technically you can talk through it. And then of course, along with the N64, there's all types of different colors and themes, which, helps make it your controller and your system. And to a lot of people means something, controllers nowadays, there's so many of them. So I think all of those things go into what makes the N64 controller such a strong competitor and why I think it is in the Final Four, and I think rightfully so. I think if it were on the other side, I think it's better than both of the previous two we've talked about. But it's not going against Super Scope. It's not going against a Virtual Boy. It's going against the Dreamcast, the Sega Dreamcast in 1998. It was the first 128-bit console, Alex, and it has done a lot. The more I research about the Dreamcast, because I've personally never had one, the more I want to play it now. Tell me, what is in your experience with the Dreamcast, and do you think it's viable like today, or what do you think about the fact it kept pushing the envelope even back in 1998?
Yeah, Dreamcast came out like 1 year too soon. And I think there were some technological advancements the year after it came out, which made the PlayStation 2 so powerful, which ended up blowing it out of the water. But yeah, when you held the Dreamcast controller and you started up a Dreamcast, you really felt like, okay, this is next gen. There's been a PlayStation, there's been an N64. We've had those for a while. Now Sega's back into the fold and they got this beast of a console. You saw the games like Virtual On, which you used to only see in the arcade. A lot of the games were like, you'd only seen this in the arcade before. Technology wasn't good enough yet, and now we're able to do this. It was like a dream arcade machine. One of the first games I played was Berserk Guts Revenge, which just like, oh my goodness, it has like a good story for like an arcade beat 'em up game. Like what's going on there? That looks amazing. The images are crisp. It's got good audio. Then you get like the best version of Resident Evil 3, Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil Code Veronica, and they feel great. They look great. So the Dreamcast was just, man, anybody who had one and played one usually fell in love with it. And then the controller, it felt next gen, right? It's like they saw what PlayStation and Sony were trying to do, and they decided we're going to nail it with our controller. So it put the analog stick at the forefront. Whereas with the N64, it's like you kind of had options. Most of the time, games use the analog stick, but you kind of had options. And it's almost like when they designed the N64, they didn't know what people were going to go for, analog or D-pad. With the Dreamcast, it was like, listen, your primary position is going to be your analog stick. We got a D-pad here if you need it, but we know you're going to be using the analog stick because our games are all going to be 3D and they're all going to be good. And they're all going to use that next gen power. It had the pressured shoulder buttons, which weren't like pressure sensitive like you see in the DualSense, but they still had some give to them, and that felt good. The controller looked pretty big, but when you held it, it was pretty thin overall, except for the parts that you had to grab, which was good news. You didn't have a lot of needless weight. So the controller was pretty lightweight, but it was doing a lot for you. So I don't know. I had a Dreamcast after going through a whole PlayStation 2 and Xbox and GameCube era. I got a Dreamcast later, piled on a bunch of old cheap games for it, and it just felt nice. I didn't feel like I was playing a retro game. It almost felt like an alternate universe of where gaming could have been going at the time. And for that reason, it didn't feel old. And the controller also felt like an alternate universe controller evolution. And it felt fresh, and it still feels fresh when you grab the controller.
Yeah, and I know obviously it doesn't get a lot of the clout because he had the PlayStation, Nintendo, but when it came out, the first year it outsold Nintendo, and then it even had more pre-sales than the PlayStation did. So, I mean, it did it pretty well initially, but then some of the things I thought that were really unique that I didn't know until I started doing research is that one, it allowed you to allow online play. It had motion controllers. Like, for example, there was this Sega Bass Fishing, and it was a motion control. So freaking neat. And then it allowed you to surf the web, and it had internet browsers. You could send emails. Like, that is really revolutionary stuff that we didn't see until years afterward.
And online multiplayer. You could play Quake against people online. It was awesome.
Yeah, incredible. So as we talk about the controller, the biggest negative to me is that it really is bulky. Seems like maybe some of the buttons could be bigger, or the controller could be in general smaller. Like, the proportions seem a little off, but that's the only real negative that I could see. You have your directional pad. You mentioned the shoulder buttons. You've got your analog sticks, the forward main button, and then the virtual memory unit, which I really want to hound on because I think this is interesting. Not only is it kind of like your memory card, like for the N64, but it allowed you to, in some games, play mini games or utilize actually being able to see your health in real time or other information like inventories or things of that nature. And then games afterwards, like handhelds, PSPs, and just other handhelds really utilize that in the future. But it was the first one to do it. And like right now, we have the DualSense, and yeah, you can push on the controller and make it do stuff, but there's no display there. I like the idea that you have a display that it tells you how many lives do you have, or how much health do you have, or I don't know what the mini games would be like. What do you think about that feature, the virtual memory unit of that Dreamcast controller?
I've been a fan of like controller-based screens ever since they came out. I mean, the Wii U gamepad got a lot of flack for it, but there's games I like playing on the Wii U gamepad. Zelda in particular, where you can have your inventory in front of you. Like, I want to play that way, where I have the inventory on my screen here or the map on my screen here, and I have the game up there on the TV. I don't have to hit pause and wait for the screen to load up and manage stuff. I can just get into it and go. I love that. And I really love that on the Dreamcast with the VMU, because when you play Resident Evil, you don't have a health bar unless you go into your inventory, you hit pause and pull up your inventory, then it shows you your status. And that breaks the flow of the game. And it's really annoying. It makes you not want to check things out. But you can check right there in your VMU. You can see your heartbeat pattern and see how you're doing health-wise. It's a very simple thing, but it's a really nice effect that was added to video games. And it's something we don't see too much of nowadays, but Wii U tried it in gamepad, and I loved the effect there. And I loved it here on the Dreamcast. Another thing is, like, you play Sonic, you would collect these little creatures. I think they were called Chozos or something. No, that's Metroid. anyways, you could collect these little animals in Sonic, and then you could carry the controller around, and like it's like a Tamagotchi. You take care of your little animal or whatever, and then
Oh,
pop
no
it in there,
way.
and then it's leveled up in the game. Like that kind of cool stuff happened. The Dreamcast also had 2 slots, right? You could have 2 VMUs in there, or you could have a VMU in there and a Rumble controller, which unlike the N64, you have to choose. Do I want to Rumble? Do I want to have a full gaming experience, or do I want to be able to save my game on this? For some reason, the game can't save even though it's a cartridge. Like that compromise, you don't have to worry about there. So it's always nice. And even if you're not going to use Rumble, you don't have to decide which memory card has my Daytona USA game in it. I'll just put both my memory cards in there. One of them is going to have it. It was just such a nice touch, a nice feature. Of course, in the end, it was probably underutilized, but there's a lot of stuff that could have been done there. And they did a good amount in the first party games, and it felt nice and it felt good, and it was innovative, and it's stuff that I wish hadn't gone by the wayside.
Yeah, and like I mentioned, I like the idea of using it as a motion controller, like in the bass fishing game. I know last video we talked about Seaman. I really like that game, the addition of the peripheral of the microphone, just like Hey You Pikachu, but it worked a lot better. It was a lot cleaner. I mean, Seaman was a total dick, but I like him better than a Dr. Seussed up Mickey Mouse impersonator, you know? So I liked the Seaman game. I liked where it was pushing, and the fact it set trends, and other people did what they did, improved upon it, and they did it years later. That's the thing that blows my mind. It wasn't just like PlayStation 2 was like, oh, we need to use that. I mean, it was in it way in advance. Generations ahead, you went back in time and was like, that was a good idea. To me, that means a lot. So we gotta make a decision here, Alex. It's N64 Dreamcast, and we got 2, I think, really good controllers. Honestly, I think this probably should have been a championship match, but March Madness is crazy. It doesn't work like that. Yeah. So what are your thoughts? N64 Dreamcast.
I had a reason for my answer, and then I forgot it, just thinking about getting wrapped up about how excited I was about the Dreamcast. I mean, here's the thing. Okay, here's what's going to decide for me. And it's ergonomics, what feels natural. Now, they both controllers have the issue of your thumb starts hurting after using the analog controller a lot. It was Mario Party on N64 and the wrestling games on N64 where I would just, the skin would be wearing off my thumb. I wouldn't be able to play games for like a week while I wait for that skin and the roughness to grow back. The Dreamcast controller, its analog stick, instead of having the ridges, it had little like pointy notches in it, like things sticking out of the thumbstick that would, you're supposed to be able to grip with it, but they got sharp and they hurt and they really ground into your skin. So they're on equal footing there. Dreamcast, takes the cake in terms of memory utilization. They both have pretty crappy D-pads. The Dreamcast D-pad wasn't really reliable either. Kind of had a hard idea, and the corners on it were really sharp, so that would also hurt if you hit it the wrong way. Both have the same start button right in the middle, so a lot of stuff shared here. But the big difference is when I put a Dreamcast controller in front of somebody, they grab it exactly how it's supposed to be grabbed, and they're ready to start playing. When I put N64 controllers in front of somebody, I could do it right now with my kids, never seen an N64 in their life. Put the controller in front of them, here's what they're going to do. They're going to pick up that middle prong, and they're going to use their hand, little pinchers like this, and they're going to move the analog stick around like that, and it makes no freaking sense, and that's what people want to do naturally. It's bad design, and so for that fact, it's emblematic of the ergonomics and the natural feeling of the Dreamcast controller. I go with the Dreamcast controller.
Yeah, I am. It's tough because I actually think, based on comfort alone, the N64, although janky, although maybe it's not the most intuitive, I think it's more comfortable because it's not so bulky. It's not so big. It's like that freaking Xbox Duke controller. Like it's just too big. And then also the Dreamcast had that, I don't know why they did this. The cord that connects to the console is coming like at you. So if you're holding it, the cord comes this way towards you and then out. Why?
But it has a notch under the memory card, so you can just tuck it in there, so it comes out the top if you want.
True, but why? Where this, I don't know, something not a huge deal, but like why? So those design things are hard to get over, but where I put the Dreamcast ahead is the advancement in technology and the trend setting. That VMU really is the thing that puts it over the top for me, because not only is it allowing you to manipulate and play the games, but it's adding to them. Something that an N64 controller never. Honestly, I think any controller in this genre, in this vintage controllers, none of them did that. So I agree with you. That means our championship round is the Virtual Boy controller versus the Sega Dreamcast.
This is a battle of ergonomics. Yeah. Adam, just to put the argument to bed, I want you to hold that N64 controller real quick. Hold it like you're about to play GoldenEye. Okay, bam. Good. Hey, that looked natural. Now imagine you suddenly need to use the D-pad. Switch over to the D-pad. Say you got to hit left on the D. See, look at that. You had to let go of the controller and jump on over there. What if you had to hit the D-pad and the Z button, right? What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Hopefully your finger reaches long enough you can do that. Yeah, that doesn't feel good. It's not right. On the Dreamcast, all buttons are available at all time. That's how it ends up winning. But okay, yeah. Well, that's it. That leads us to our final round: Virtual Boy versus Dreamcast. And it's going to be a tough debate. It's going to be a hard debate. All of my decision making has gone into getting these two where they are, and we're going to find out what shakes out in the end. So be sure, hang tight with us after this sponsored break. And join us as we crown the greatest video game controller of all time. We'll see you after the break.
This episode is sponsored by Adam Dumping in a Bucket. This 100% natural, organic, vegan matter is produced by farm-fed Adams and collected straight from the anus to your table. Use it as a centerpiece, on a shelf, or as a conversation piece. And remember, because it's totally organic, it's edible and tastes great too. From anus to you, get it today at an Adam near you. Hope you enjoyed that message from the sponsor of today's video. And this is it. Virtual Boy versus the Sega Dreamcast controller discussion. Which one is going to win the best vintage controller? So Alex, Virtual Boy, how about you? We'll both make arguments. So my argument for the Virtual Boy to win is the fact that it's simpler, it works well, and it's more comfortable than the Dreamcast. That's honestly the only three things I can say, but that makes a good controller. It's got to be comfortable, ergonomic. It's got to work well, which certainly it does. And it's simple. It doesn't have all this extra mumbo jumbo. So that's my argument. Short, sweet, simple. How about yours?
For the Virtual Boy, it's pure comfort and it's pure elegance. There was nothing wrong with the Game Boy when it came out, how you controlled it. And the Virtual Boy was supposed to be the next iteration on that. And what they did was they said, hey, one D-pad. D-pad was a wonderful innovation. Let's make two of them. Thinking into the future that when you have 3D games, you're going to need the same level of dexterity to control your view as you have to control your movement. Very forward thinking there. And it kind of kicked off the whole idea of dual analog that we're seeing nowadays. So I think people don't really realize that it was one of the first times we saw that step forward in innovation, that forethought into what 3D gaming was going to be. And now dual analog is a mainstay. It has to exist. So that's that forethought mixed with the comfort and the overall elegance is the strength of the Virtual Boy.
Okay, now what would your argument for the Dreamcast be?
Really, bluntly, is look at the controllers that exist nowadays. Look at the progression of controllers in the future. Here we have a Wavebird. Does this not look like a Dreamcast controller to you? It's got these long handles right here that a Dreamcast has. It has these spongy, springy shoulder buttons that the Dreamcast had. It has, it went away from here with the analog stick being down here that you see on like the PlayStation controller here. And it moved your primary thumbstick up here, which is what you're wanting. That's where you want your thumb to be. It's got the 4 face buttons. That's a mainstay as well. It really fired off on all cylinders there. And you see, even one of the greatest, most classic modern game controllers, this is pretty much a Dreamcast controller with a different plastic shell on it. And it works really well. I mean, they added the analog stick. Of course, take this out. You got a Dreamcast controller right here. So obviously the market decided and said Dreamcast was doing it right. We just got to make the Dreamcast controller better. Of course, they took away the screen input, which is the one thing that I really liked. For some reason, that innovation didn't carry forward. But the fact that, Dreamcast lost, but all the things that beat Dreamcast kind of look like a Dreamcast. I think that's a really good indicator of the quality of the Dreamcast controller.
Yeah, I think you summed it up really well there. I think the virtual memory unit is really the thing for me that puts it over the top, and that not only Is it a controller that works well? Maybe it's a little too bulky, but it enhances your gameplay. And unlike the Virtual Boy, it has those peripherals where you can fish with it, or you can talk to Seaman, or you can have those little Sega Tamagotchi things. Like, that is so neat and so innovative and cool. It's got the 2 slots for the memory card and the virtual memory unit. It's so advanced, and as you mentioned, it really laid the foundation for future controllers. So I don't want to belabor the point. We've already talked in depth about both of those. So what is your answer? Remember, this is it's for you, the people, is unbiased evidence for what the best controller is. Nostalgia isn't part of this, Alex. So I want your answer. Unbiased, what is the best controller? Vintage controller 2001 or before?
So when you're thinking about a video game controller, it's got a primary function. It needs to control the game for you, and it needs to feel natural. And both of these controllers are doing that. There's one thing that a controller should never, ever do, and that's cause pain. And the Dreamcast controller causes a lot of pain when you use it. If you go the wrong way with it, the D-pad hurts, the analog stick hurts, and the Virtual Boy controller never hurt me. If anything, it always made me feel better. I want future video game controllers to pick up what the Virtual Boy was doing with the sheer ergonomics and the natural feeling of it, and the elegance and simplicity. We got all these buttons now. We don't need all these buttons. It's nice. It seems useful in some of these games, but we're always hitting just the same couple of buttons every time. I love the simplicity of it, and it enhances the game design and streamlines the process. I would love it if I could use my Virtual Boy controller for other video games. I'd love to be able to plug it into my PC. I love that controller, and it feels so good. And the Dreamcast controller, I'm happy for what it did, and I'm happy to where it's gotten us. And modern controllers are just better versions of the Dreamcast controller. But I want to see what the Virtual Boy controller could have been if it were iterated on in the same capacity. For that reason, Virtual Boy controller never hurt me. That's why the Virtual Boy controller is the winner here.
Well, ain't this some crap? Because I strongly disagree with you. First of all, if you did even an ounce of hard labor in your entire life, or manual labor at all, the only time you use your hand is in the bedroom or the bathroom or wherever you do your business. Then you wouldn't have weak little dainty thumbs and hands, you baby. The thing is, Virtual Boy is a good controller, but it doesn't do anything. The Dreamcast still lets you allow you to manipulate the character and the gameplay and really be in control of the game. And the Virtual Boy allows you to do that too, but that's it. That's all it's got. The Dreamcast laid that foundation. It allows you to enhance the gameplay. That is why it is definitively, easily the best controller. And the fact you need to get kicked off, you're then nostalgia get in the way of an unbiased opinion for you, the people. Dang it, Alex. I knew this was going to happen. I agree with Virtual Boy getting this far, but that is bull crap. So now we've got Bean Boozles. I'm surprised we haven't taken one so far. How do you want to do this? You want me to spin? Because the thing is, we got to decide this right here, right now. The people need to know what is the best vintage controller.
Adam, this is it. We got to decide. We can't leave this up to us to determine it. It's got to be into the hands of the beans. So Adam, you're going to spin. We're both going to eat a bean. And whichever one of us gets a good bean, that's the deciding factor. And if both of us get a bad bean, we got to go again. We got to fight this battle to the very end and let the beans tell us what the best controller is.
You know what? It's the championship round. We got to do it. Here goes the flick. You have to be kidding. You have to be joking.
All
it's
right.
barf.
All right, let's do it.
I am dead serious.
I know.
We've done, 3 videos. Every time I've spun, it's been barf.
Grab the bean and let's pop it in.
Oh my, I'm running out of barf beans because I've had so many. I've got 3 more in here. Oh my, unbelievable.
Ready, set.
To the Dreamcast.
To the Virtual Boy.
Wait.
Oh God. Oh God.
Oh, dude, I raw dogged it too. I don't have any water. Is yours
Spin it
barf?
again. Yeah, it's barf. Spin it
Yeah.
again.
Of course it's barf. Oh my. Last episode, I was sick for like 2 hours after the episode because I had this. Dude, we just gotta keep going. Maybe we'll get something to drown it out. It was almost barf again, but it's birthday cake or dirty dishwater. Oh, okay. Oh, wow.
All I taste is barf. Oh, that's dirty dishwater.
Yep.
Oh. Oh, spin it again, you a-hole. Oh,
it's still better than the barf, though. Like
it
it's
doesn't taste
sweeter.
good mixed. It's mixed.
It's sweeter than the barf.
It tastes like
Dirty dishwater again.
it
Oh,
tastes like pine sol.
yeah. Okay. Come on, please. It tastes like soap. Oh, dirty.
Spin it again,
Dude, this has to end. Oh no. Dead fish or strawberry banana smoothie. Oh my dude, my stomach.
I didn't know we were going this deep tonight.
No, please, I hate dead fish. It's sweet.
Strawberry banana smoothie.
You too?
Mm-hmm.
Are you serious?
That was the barf coming back up.
Dude, what is this? Oh, guys, we're dead serious. We didn't rig this. We didn't rig crap.
We wouldn't do that to you guys.
Oh,
We're in court.
juicy pear booger. Dude, something's gotta
Something's
end.
got to give, yeah.
Oh, this is the most beans I've taken in a long time. That's pear. Wait, I have so many things in my mouth.
Mine's definitely a booger.
Mine's pear. Gosh, my mouth is nasty, but it's so sweet. Booger's not sweet. It's pear. Sega Dreamcast! What do you guys say about that, loser?
Oh God, it's. I had a whole thing of ice cream just before we started recording, and that is coming up now too, along with all these horrible beans. Oh my! I got a sweet.
Dude, it's bad taking them together.
Yeah, right after one after the other. That was awful. That's the worst. That is the worst. Anyways, I got to get out of here. That's it, baby. Sega Dreamcast is apparently the greatest controller of all time. Adam, how would you feel if the PlayStation 6 was announced tomorrow and they just straight up had a Sega Dreamcast as a controller, the Dreamcast controller as a controller? How would you feel? Would you be disappointed? Would you feel justified?
I want the haptic feedback. I want the adaptive triggers. If it has that in the Dreamcast along with a virtual memory unit, I would be thrilled. Let's go. Could you imagine nowadays what they could do with that little screen? I can't talk. My mouth is, I am so disgusted. It's like I swigged orange juice and brushed my teeth and then swallowed it and then barfed it up. That's
that's exactly what it tastes like. Yeah.
Horrible.
No, I think that's a good point, Adam. Take out the little touch screen that we have on the DualSense and put in like an LED screen that we could see instead of the VMU. Give us that. Let us use that. That's what we want. And that's what we want to see in the next iteration of the games. Bring the screens back. Don't let Wii U kill it. All right. And yeah, I'd be happy. Update the analog stick, please. Maybe give us a serviceable D-pad. But yeah, no, it's a good controller. I'm happy to have let this be runner up to that. All right. Well, that's it. Gaming Succession. Dreamcast is the best controller of all time. Court is adjourned.